I'm invisible.
I'm invisible.
You're invisible? Why are you invisible?
I'm a G-H-O-S-T.
Because I'm a G-H-O-S-T. Yes, he had quite a sense of humour. He also used to swear a lot as well. I'm Maurice Gross, and I'm one of Britain's leading psychic investigators. I'm 76 now, and still on the trail of ghosts and poltergeists. In 1977, I led a team which investigated what is now regarded as the world's most famous poltergeist case, the Enfield Poltergeist. It became world headlines at the time, mainly because of the strange, gruff voice that came from a girl called Janet. Hollywood soon got in on the act, and the makers of several box office hits acknowledged a debt to my case in Enfield. I've never been able to forget that voice. He called himself many names, but mostly Bill or Fred. I still listen to the 180 hours of tapes I recorded during the investigation.
Bow, 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 the pub, check you down the street. Lovely, merrily, 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 lovely part to trade. Now f***ing smile.
This voice is coming from an 11-year-old girl. Well, perhaps, Guy, perhaps you've got something to say to them.
Yeah. I'd like to know how you make this noise without bashing Janet's vocal cords to pieces. If I do it for half a minute, I get a sore throat.
Goose chasers here.
And we found, on analysis, the voice was not made by the larynx, the voice box, but by the false vocal fold, which is above the larynx. And you only use that when you lose your voice and you talk like that. Well, if you talk like that for more than a couple of minutes, you start getting a sore throat. Talk like that for 5 minutes or so and you're going to start doing damage to your throat. And yet this voice used to speak up to 3 hours at a time. Not continuously, of course, but up to 3 hours at a time without the girl showing any distress at all. Absolutely remarkable. The voice was just part of it. The girl levitated, going from horizontal to vertical in a sixth of a second. Furniture was thrown around the rooms. The house was swarming with journalists. But after 4 days, they were baffled and frightened and called my team for help. A policewoman gave a sworn affidavit of the extraordinary activity she witnessed. Even the ghost chipped in. The death certificate confirmed the truth of what the ghost was saying. Many objects materialised out of thin air. Spoons were bent. Fires broke out spontaneously in the impoverished family's home. The family had to endure practically every known phenomena in a poltergeist case. They were traumatised. They didn't benefit financially and were ostracised by many of their local community. The Enfield poltergeist menaced that family for 18 months. It nearly destroyed their lives. I'm going back to see them for the first time in 20 years. Janet, the girl at the centre of it all, prefers to remain anonymous, but I spoke to her mother and sister. Well, here I am at this famous house in Enfield, and here you see Margaret and her mother, who were very, very involved in this case. You remember the day I first came?
Yes, I remember, Mr. Gross, and you was on the case ever since then,
yes.
Onwards, and you saw everything and took note and explained to us.
You remember when the reporters and journalists were here? How did they carry on?
I could see the fear in some of their faces also, and they probably could sense that we was dead scared and wanted to run out any minute. I know I did. My sister did, I know that.
I remember one of them came in and he
explained to me that I'd got a poltergeist in the house.
And
I said, what on earth's that? And I nearly fainted when he told me. I didn't even know what it was. In fact, I don't think any of us did.
And we couldn't even
Until
say the word
afterwards.
poltergeist until Mr. Groves from the Psychical Research explained how to say poltergeist.
That's me.
And also what it actually meant in, was it German? Was it?
Yeah, poltergeist, noisy
Noisy
ghost.
spirit.
In the meaning
Noisy
of it
ghost.
also,
Yeah.
which he explained to us.
What do you say to people who say to you, with you children playing around, what do you say about that?
I say that's a matter of opinion. If you haven't experienced it, you're going to say that. But it did really happen.
It upsets me deep down to think that they can't give us an open mind, the ones that just put it down completely. But all I can say to them is I wish they can experience the same thing as what we went through. They certainly wouldn't say it was false or fake or it was child playing or anything of that kind.
The welfare of people at the centre of poltergeist activity is very important. I believe that most poltergeist activity is actually caused by very high levels of stress. Occasionally, you get paranormal entities interacting with us, and this is what I think happened at Enfield. I haven't spent all my years searching for the paranormal. Like everybody else, I had a normal life to lead. When I left school, I was a commercial artist. I did 2 years apprenticeship. You can see on the pictures on the wall, well, actually they are my pictures that I have done. I turned into quite a good commercial artist, in fact. But then the war was looming, and I joined the Royal Artillery, super heavy guns. We had to make a hasty retreat back to Dunkirk, with, of course, thousands of other troops. And we were bombed and blitzed to hell there. It really was rough going. I suppose I was one of the reasonably lucky ones. I got off on a destroyer. I met Betty at a tea dance in Marble Arch. Always very taken with her, right from the word go. And it was on a Sunday, and I met her on a Sunday, proposed to her on the Thursday, and in 10 weeks we were married. Because everybody said at the time, oh, these war marriages, it would never last, it would never last. I don't know, perhaps it won't. I mean, it's only 51 years now, so I suppose. I think I can say it'll last. We've had a good life. A good life, that is, until the death of our youngest daughter, Janet, in a road accident. Betty and I believe that Janet tried to contact us after her physical death. You might believe that was just our way of dealing with bereavement, but it was a turning point in my life. I decided to carry out serious research into the paranormal and join the Society for Psychical Research. This is now my psychic HQ. The Society is the world's leading centre for the scientific study of the paranormal. I'm the chairman of the Spontaneous Phenomena Committee. People write to us from all around the country with their strange cases, which we investigate on a non-fee-paying basis. Can you recap on who he said was psychologically disturbed?
He said
What
something about...
name of who was it? Because there's so many
That's
names.
the covering
came up.
letter, isn't it?
Yes, on the covering letter. There's so many people mentioned
Yes, I was
there.
wondering that.
I spoke in the early 60s and a retired university lecturer.
Well, I think we can dispense with that case then, yeah. We had a letter from a woman in Watford. She claimed her clothes were being severely damaged and sometimes disappearing altogether. Shirley had submitted herself to psychiatric treatment, but there was no explanation. She now keeps her clothes in padlocked cupboards. Only her husband has the keys. In desperation, she contacted our society. Hello, Shirley.
Hello, nice to see you. Hi.
Hello, all right, thank you. Hello, doggy. Oh, it's excitement. Hello.
Go in.
Hello. They're wonderful dogs. They're very, very intelligent.
Come upstairs and just let me show you.
You know I'm making a video diary, Phil. You've no objection to us using some of this. We won't use much of it, but some of it you have.
No objection at all, Morris.
Right, OK, thank you.
See.
And here the famous
yes, this
padlock
is my husband's
wardrobe.
With padlocks on that one. This is mine with the stronger lock on the chain. Again, I don't even touch these normally.
You can't, can you unlock
No, no, my husband's got the keys. There's only one set and he's got them with him.
Have any shoes or clothes or anything disappeared from that one?
Oh, yeah.
Whilst it's been padlocked up recently?
Yeah. Yes, oh, yeah. In the last few months I've had a shirt from there and a skirt. Sometimes I forget and then I suddenly think, oh, I haven't seen that skirt or whatever. And from the bottom, I mean, my brown boots were actually in that wardrobe when they
yes.
the box. We actually found the carrier bag in the bottom of that wardrobe.
Now, when you want anything out of there, you have to ask your husband
Yeah,
to
I
ask?
leave, if he isn't in, I leave him a note. I had to leave him a note actually last night to leave this skirt and sweater.
Well, that's
out.
Dreadful.
Yeah,
Really?
And sometimes he goes out and I have to say, no, I
No, excuse me laughing, but it seems to be a ludicrous situation.
I don't tell people, I don't say anything to anybody.
Come on, dog, you're the one who's responsible, I'm sure. You are responsible for it. Oh, look at him wagging his tail.
I wish he knew. If that dog could talk, he'd be able to tell me a lot of things.
Yes, I'm sure he would.
Yes.
May I suggest to you that you stop all this padlocking business and get back to a normal life, and if things still disappear, you start to accept it and see then whether it starts to diminish. I think, you see, I think what is happening is that let's assume that it is paranormal activity. I mean, make the assumption it is paranormal activity. By having all these padlocks and bolts and sleeping in the spare room, you are continuing a high-stress situation. Now, if you're continuing this high-stress situation, and if it is paranormal activity, if it is teleportation, the movement of objects, or whatever is happening to the objects, being cut up, so on and so forth, the stress situation is going to make it worse. Remove this stress situation and see what happens. See where, because we've tried everything else. We've tried the hospital, we've tried social workers, we've tried psychiatrists, and also we've tried hypnosis with me, and nothing seems to have worked. Well, let's try and get back to a normal state of life where you remove all the bolts and the locks and everything else, and you have complete access, and you go back to living as a normal person with your husband.
We have done this once, haven't we?
Yeah, well, do it again.
Yeah?
Do it again. Get back to normal. What I want for Shirley is for her to get back to a normal way of life. I've dealt with hundreds of cases over the years. Most of them involve great personal distress. Visiting people all over the country is fascinating, but very time-consuming. I have to fit everything in with my regular work as an industrial designer and inventor. My latest project is a cost-effective poster machine for use in public places around the world. This is the workshop where I worked on this machine way back in the late 60s. Much later on, I repatented it with all new ideas. It's a very easy machine to work. Posters are hung into the machine. The machine automatically changes the posters. It adjusts itself for any number of posters you'll put in, up to 24. And this lot you see there is going out to New Zealand. The demand for my invention is growing all the time. I now have to make sure it's patented for the international market. That's my big poster machine, the result of many years of hard work. We've run out of 4-star. No, let's go down the road. This morning I was clearing out my workshop, something I don't very often do, and much to my surprise I came across my second invention that I patented after I came out of the army in 1945. For this moulding here and the moulding for the head I had to get a licence. Eventually, after much trouble, I got one, and I made a few hundred of them, and they're quite successful. In fact, the Duchess of York at the time, she bought a couple for her children, and that rather set me off on the inventing trail. I devote much of my time to collecting documents, tapes and photographs which record unexplained events. I hope to leave a solid legacy of evidence behind me. One of my main interests in parapsychology, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, has been the examination of anomalous photographs, that is, photographs that really have no explanation. And here I'm just duplicating them for transparencies for my lectures. This is an ordinary photograph of a group of holidaymakers in the Austrian Tyrol. It was taken with flash, but seconds before this photo was taken, another photo was taken when the flash didn't go off. And this is it. If you can't spot the difference, here it is. An extra person there, quite solid, 15% too big, seated behind the beer glasses. No one knows who she is. One of the world's top experts in detecting fraudulent photographs, Vernon Harrison, has scrutinised the negatives and says they're absolutely inexplicable. As I say, top experts have looked at it, and I am personally convinced that that is an apparition, a real apparition, a solid one. One of the best photographs I think we'll probably ever get. To some people, there's a big problem relating psychic research to my Jewish religion. It's not a problem for me. There are also those who think I'm a bit obsessed with poltergeists and ghosts. But my family know me better. To them, I'm just dad or granddad. My work as an industrial designer and my investigations into the paranormal are a big part of my life. But my family, my friends and my religion are much more important to me than anything else.
Do you remember Jinx and the Misses, Pixie and Dixie? Oh, Misses. We're watching them all, aren't we?
This is my youngest grandchild.
Yes.
I love it when we get together as a family, but sometimes Betty and I are conscious that Janet isn't here.
You know, sometimes it's hard to remember back all those years, isn't it? She left school.
Yes,
18.
she was born in 53. Janet was born in
53,
53.
dear. 53,
yeah.
yes, I won't forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was born in 53.
Actually,
she was always a very strong-willed child. She did what she wanted to do, but she was a little character, you know, even in those days, when she was little. She wouldn't be left behind, would she?
No, no, she's a lovely child.
She kept up with the other two, and she was such a tomboy.
I could only remember her as a vital human being, of which she was. I mean, she's a wonderful child, and that's how I wanted to remember her, and that's how we've always remembered her. And as you say, you never get over it.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, time helps, but losing a child, especially your youngest child, is...
It doesn't really help. It's just that you get used to what you have to go through,
that's
and
right.
life goes on, and other things happen. And
You get used to life.
it recedes, but you never ever forget, and you always feel it.
We were very depressed about it last week.
Very depressed indeed.
Happens.
I often wonder what would have happened had she lived. How different our lives would have been. Your life would have been quite different. Do you realise that, don't you?
My life would have been quite different because it was the
You would
extraordinary things that happened when she were around about the time she died. The extraordinary psychic thing, what I consider to be psychic, and so did you, that happened that sort of launched me on to this determination to try and find out more about what happens when you die and what psychic research is all about, and that's how it really started me all off. The death of a loved one often sparks off paranormal experiences. I took on a case in Yorkshire where a couple reported that their son, who had died in a road accident, was appearing on their television screen. They say their television was actually off when they took this photograph. Right, let's start from the beginning, shall we? The story.
It started in October. Like freezing cold presence come round me. And like I could feel like something, like on my legs, like touch me, like on my legs. Yeah, and I like get these cobwebs like over my face and that.
There are certain situations where straightforward poltergeist phenomena, like things flying about, water happening, fires happening, all those sort of
Well, we ain't out like that.
I know, you won't either. I see a parallel between your case and my case.
Yeah, but what about this, what's round her all the time then?
Well, that's because she's very, very sensitive. Why should psychokinetic activity happen round me?
No, but
all the
she
time.
can sit in that chair and say, if it's you, Sean, touch my hand.
Yeah, I know.
And someone touches her hand.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough.
And yeah, you've said that, yeah.
So what's your interpretation?
That it's Sean about.
Well, I know there's somebody there, but I don't know.
Well, okay, but you see, in the end, it must be with you. If you believe that is your son, then so be it. What else are you looking for? I think we'd better go back to the beginning of the story about your son.
He took the car out to his mates down Castleford, and then when he got to Ferrybridge Power Station, he's coming round this bend and he hit a little bridge in a field where he went off-road. And then police come and told us that this could be our lad. So we went to hospital and see him to identify him, and then put him on life support machine. It's up, so nobody knows these things till they've gone through it, do they?
Oh, goodness, it's the most terrible. I mean, for parents to be here, you say to yourself, "Why am I here? My child's not." Well, you know what you're feeling. I know.
We're supposed to go first, aren't we?
That's it. That's it. It's the most terrible thing. It's against nature.
Yeah.
I feel for you. You don't know how much. Very emotional about it, I tell you. And I'm not usually an emotional person. But I know how you're feeling. Terrible. It brings it all back to, in fact, sitting here talking to you, brings it all back to me. Terrible. Betty and I are having a little get-together this evening with our oldest friends. We've all been together now for most of our lives.
Will he tell you the absolute truth? I said, of course he does. I said, what he tells me is the absolute truth. He said, well, had he seen a ghost? So I said, I think he has. Oh, he said, what time was it?
He said what?
What time was it?
Marilyn, Oliver, Jonathan, all grown, they're grown so big, all of them, you know. I know. Yes.
What have you been doing with yourself, Harold?
Well, nothing special really, just keeping my mind occupied, doing some gardening.
This photograph was taken in about 1936. That's Julius, the one who died on the right. There's Ralph in the centre, and me posing like